Let's take a look at these new Dark Elf units, shall we? The Shadow and the Blade DLC has announced quite a few new units for the Dark Elves, which of course raises a lot of questions. How viable will they be? How will they affect the meta? Will they be completely broken? Will they not be playable? How will they find their place in a roster that already has quite a few units? Of course, no one knows for sure. We don't know what the patch notes will bring, so how the overall units surrounding them might change. But I'm going to take a look at the units' descriptions and what I already know about them, and try to predict how they will affect the meta, so that whether you want to play as the Dark Elves or play against them, you'll be better prepared. Let's take a look. First, Lord, of course, Legendary Lord coming for the Dark Elves is Malice Darkblade. Now his description reads as follows. In battle, Malice is a heavily armored close quarters combatant who excels at dealing armor-piercing damage thanks to his powerful Warp Sword of Cain. He rides a ferocious cold one called Spite into battle and instills fear upon his enemies, making him a terrifying opponent on the battlefield. Malice has the unique yet costly ability to transform into the demon Tsarkan, the Drinker of Worlds. This ability refills his health, augments his stats, and significantly alters his abilities in battle. So, Malice, biggest challenge for him will be overcoming the enormously powerful legendary lords that the Dark Elves already have. They have Morathi, they have Malekith, they have decent generic lords even, so there's a lot to compete with. But if we just look at Malice, advantage that he has is armor piercing damage, which is always good, and of course one of the biggest things is also having a mount and being able to heal himself. Now he also has this unique Demon of Tsarkan ability, which I think will create a quite interesting dynamic when he is picked, which is basically, I think you're going to want to ignore him as much as possible, and then when you do bring his health down and suddenly does that transformation ability and you haven't killed enough of his army yet, he might overwhelm you, especially like if that gets coupled with a murderous prowess twist. So it's definitely something that's going to add a dynamic to the battle. Now, do I think he will be viable? Yes. The only disadvantage I see with this lord is that apparently he doesn't have a flying mount, so that might be a problem. But I think in matchups where you would like to pick Malekith on a cold one, Malice might become the better option, especially if you want to go for a different lore of magic. I don't think he'll be, the go-to choice all around, but I definitely think he will be a viable pick and something that people will have to learn how to play against. So, with that, let's take a look at the next guy, which is, of course, the Beastmaster.
Unleash the beast by fang and claw.
Not that guy. Talking about this guy. So, High Beastmaster, new Lord option. Once again, I gotta repeat myself. These Beastmasters will have a lot of lords to contend with. Legendary lords, generic lords. So that's going to be quite difficult. But let's first take a look at what they have to offer. Dark Elves have long been experts at bending beasts and animals to their will, the description says. And the High Beastmasters are those that show even greater talent and aptitude. In particular, Beastmasters have considerable anti-large capabilities, making them a powerful tool when facing enemies that bring numerous large units into battle. So, decent lord, I think, but I do not think they will be able to compete with the legendary lords that are already around, or Malice for that matter, especially because of the next hero that we're about to take a look at, which is the Master. And the Master, take a look at him. It says he's also anti-large, so it says Dark Elf Masters are the lesser nobles of Dark Elf society. Adept with both spear and shield, these heroes are capable of inflicting great damage to large targets, but are also capable of soaking up the most gruesome of blows thanks to their high melee defense and guardian ability, which protects nearby characters. So this is how I see it. If you want a character that's able to deal with large units, you'd rather go for a master. Now, high beast master and master combo is something I could see working out, just double anti-large fighting against large monsters if you're expecting them, but this might be a little bit too much of a gamble. And also it doesn't say anywhere that the high beast master is able to heal, so in any matchups where you face Spirit Leech, this might become a problem. But the master brings something that the Dark Elves didn't have yet, which is the Guardian ability. And with the powerful lords and heroes they have available, that is huge. That is absolutely huge. Can you imagine Malekith on a dragon with the physical resistance and all the other stuff he already has, fighting alongside a master, giving him physical resistance? So yeah, this guy, I think, will open up some great possibilities for the Dark Elves. The Anti-Large is also really good because the Dark Elves have some characters, lords that are decent at fighting up close against things, like Morathi's kind of squishy, but she has good damage. Malekith doesn't really need anti-large to kill stuff, but they don't really have that designated anti-large guy, and the Master can be that, as well as keeping other heroes and lords that are fighting alongside him alive. So I think this guy will definitely have a place in the meta. And the next thing we're going to see is the Scourge Runner Chariot. It says, quick and deadly, these war machines tear across the battlefield looking to hunt down new prey to kill or enslave. Equipped with powerful harpoons, they are a dedicated monster hunting unit, capable of bringing down even the mightiest of beasts. So I think the comparison you need to make here is sort of the difference between handgunners and huntsmen for the Empire, but then just across the Cold One chariots and the Scourge Runner chariots. So these chariots will be nice because they're a bit faster and more specialized. So basically, you will be able to replace any chariots you're already using in builds with them, and these will just require a bit more careful use of your ammo, a bit finer control. But when we think of unit caps, I also think they're going to increase the kiting options for Dark Elves by just making more units available that are able to kite. I think this will be a decent addition to Dark Elf forces, but unless some major nerfs or buffs happen across different units, I think the Dark Rider repeater crossbows will still be picked more than this new Scourge Runner Chariot. So that's my thought on that. We will come back to the Scourge Runner Chariot later though. Next thing is the unit most people are probably the most excited about. It's the Bloodrack Medusa. Description says, bound in pain-racked serpentine bodies, the Bloodrack Medusa is a terrifying sight to behold on the battlefield. These riding horrid monsters are best positioned behind the front line to maximize their powerful ranged attacks to decimate foes. However, they can match their ranged skill with ruthless melee capabilities, granting them a useful hybrid role, while also causing fear and terror to enemy units. So this Bloodrack Medusa, guys, I think it's going to be absolutely awesome. I think it might become a bit susceptible to ranged fire, but just creatures that fill almost like an artillery role and at the same time have melee capabilities are quite powerful in this game. Best example of this is the Bastillodon Solar Engine. I don't expect the Medusa will have quite as powerful of a ranged attack, but creatures like that, they're basically the same cost or cheaper than certain artillery pieces while having similar firepower and not, giving you that problem of having a unit that can't really fight or might die instantly. So Bloodrack Medusa, I think, will have a great role, which I will discuss in more detail later on when we come to our conclusion. Let's first take a look at the Bloodrack Shrine. So, propelled by dark magic, the Bloodrack Shrine grinds along the battlefield, inspiring allies and demoralizing foes with its passive Aura of Agony and Aura of Ardor abilities. From her elevated position, the Medusa riding it has a far greater vantage point from which to cast her deadly gaze. Okay. So, Bloodwrack Shrine, guys. It has not one aura, but two. And it looks very much like a Blood Cauldron. And we know the Blood Cauldron is a pretty powerful unit. Now, that means that this thing will probably be able to fight in melee decently well, while also having artillery attacks, while also having all those auras. So it will have a big price tag accompanying it, but yeah, it's definitely one of those units that can really be the centerpiece of your army, and I expect it to be really powerful and viable, especially in a certain setup that we will discuss in a minute here. Now, they also added a new unit of Harpies. And these Harpies, they will be awesome, which you will see. So, they're called the Crowns of Cain, and it says they're always on the lookout for the next meal, and the Crowns of Cain are the most ravenous. They provide regeneration abilities in exchange for damage dealt, so they basically have the hunger, I believe, increasing their survivability and causing terror in enemy units as they guzzle down the entrails of their victims. Okay, so if you think of Harpies, what do you think? You think, okay, they're not expensive, not really cheap, but they're kind of squishy. They're not super fast, they break easily. They do decent damage, but they usually can't really stick around in combat. This unit gets a couple of things that take care of that. Most of all, the terror. Harpies are supposed to attack weak or weakened targets or units that are trying to rally and break them again. Having terror, and I'm assuming fear, because basically all units that cause terror also cause fear, is great for that. They will absolutely destroy units that are trying to rally. They will rout weak units very quickly, and therefore not take too much damage in return. Now, the regeneration ability should not be overestimated, I think, because Harpies, they have 45 models, they have pretty low health, they tend to lose models quickly, and as they lose models, of course, those models don't get healed back up, they're not undead, they're not vampire counts, so I don't think the healing will be too much of a factor. However, if they manage to fight a unit and break it with terror before they start losing too many models, then they might be able to chase it off and destroy it, and meanwhile heal everything back up. So I think this unit, because it will also have more leadership and higher stats, will be a great unit. Not just for the role that we're used to seeing Harpies in, but also for air support. You'll have a stronger unit that won't rout as quickly in air engagements and will be able to help your dragons or whatever units you're using in the air a lot better. So maybe thanks to them, we'll also see Regiment of Renown Dark Riders a little bit more. So, interestingly enough, there's a there's a Bloodwrack Medusa Regiment of Renown, which I need to discuss because it's actually one of the main things here. This Bloodwrack Medusa Regiment of Renown is called the Siren of a Red Ruin. It is fear incarnate. This unique Medusa can call upon a damage area of effect ability, Mortis Engine, which tears apart enemy units in a radius around her, making for an extremely dangerous foe in close combat. Right. So this thing is going to be the centerpiece of a type of build that I believe we will be seeing from the Dark Elves and will be the biggest impact on their meta that this DLC will bring. So some of you may already be familiar with the whole Morathi plus Blood Cauldron blob, where you stack buffs and debuffs, which is something, well, I started doing, and then there were various different versions of that build that appeared later on. Dark Elves just got a bunch of things to make this even better. Yes, they already had the Guardian ability on the Blades of the Blood Queen, but the Blades of the Blood Queen weren't always ideal. Now they can bring it on a Master and have bigger protection for Morathi and for their Blood Cauldron, while also having an anti-large unit in there that can force large units like, let's say, a Shaggoth that come in to smash Morathi or to smash the Blood Cauldron. So that's really good. So I think the Master is a good choice here. On top of that, well, they already have so many things that can help them in these blob fights, like the Charybdis with its massive leadership debuff. But I think this Bloodwrack Medusa, Regiment of Renown, is even better because it has a Mortis Engine effect. So I don't even know if other damaging aura effects will be able to compete with this blob anymore, because usually that's the counter. You bring in something that deals damage over time and you kill the blob, but if you're simultaneously taking damage from this Medusa in that way, then you have a big problem. Then it just probably cancels each other out. Of course, we don't know the exact values, and maybe some other blobs might be more powerful, but depending on which faction you are, I think you will come across these Dark Elf blob builds that are going to use this Bloodwrack Medusa and a Blood Cauldron and a Bloodwrack Shrine and Morathi, or any combination of these, and just destroy you if you do not have the ranged power to deal with that. Also, this blob will be able to attack from a distance. Morathi will be able to use magic. Bloodwrack Medusa will be able to shoot at you. It's not huge damage, but it may be enough, especially over time, to force you into a fight that you don't want against this kind of blob. So be aware that you might come across this. Bring enough ranged and other countermeasures, like, well, it depends on which faction you are, but I think Mortis Engine will definitely be needed if you're the vampire counts. I think some area of effect spells may be needed, but there's another problem. Area of effect, not that useful against single entities, and Dark Elves in this case can put a lot of money into single entities, which also tend to have these splash attacks, so they knock units away from each other. If you put them all really close to each other, they just knock everything away from them and barely take any damage in return. So I think this is going to be a Dark Elf build that will not be relevant in certain matchups where, you know, you can just shoot the blob, like Empire will just be able to shoot the blob, but against factions with weaker or no ranged options, it's going to be really powerful. And that is what I think will be the biggest change to the Dark Elf meta. Now, there's one more unit that we haven't looked at, which is the Scourge Runner Regiment of Renown. They're called the Ravagers of Ricard. They are Clark Caron's most elite Scourge Runner unit. Always thirsting for new quarry, this anti-large chariot is additionally armed with barbed nets that slow enemy units in order to increase its killing potential. This unit, I think, will become a staple in Dark Elf guiding builds. So we're not only looking at Dark Elves that are able to form stronger blobs, we're also looking at Dark Elves who are able to guide better, because Dark Elves were able to guide decently well, but they didn't really have much crowd control. They had Melkots, yeah, to slow down stuff a little bit, but they didn't have anything like this. So this unit will become a staple, I think, of Dark Elf guiding builds. So all in all, Dark Elves getting one of their viable playstyles upgraded, getting, of course, more options down the line, and most of all, getting a very, very, very scary option to blob against certain factions with so many auras and so many debuffs and buffs that you're just going to really struggle against them if you don't come prepared. And if you do come prepared, you might just face the guiding build or a standard build or whatever kind of build instead. So yeah, I expect the Dark Elves will be absolutely massive in the upcoming patch, which I don't really mind because I like the Dark Elves, but I hope that the patch, which we don't really know much about, will also make sure that a decent amount of balance between factions and in certain matchups remains. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this video. Keep an eye out because I will do the same kind of video for Skaven when I can find the time. Of course, they are also getting quite a few new units, which I will discuss later. Now, thanks for watching. Subscribe if you liked the video, and I'll see you soon.